Ladies and gentlemen, the mystery of the back room deepens, but we are going to get to the bottom of it or try to figure out something about the lore. This is Backrooms-Report, and hopefully we can finally get to the bottom of the entity. Let's get into it.
Sorry, can you repeat that? Pardon?
That's not a person.
What is it?
That is not a fucking person!
Right, Morgan, talk to me. What do you see?
Okay, so it sounds like he did make it out because they have his recording.
What's going on? Talk to us. What's happening?
Oh, maybe not. Maybe it's just audio. Dude, this is crazy that this is put together by a 16-year-old. Like, it's just so much good world building, good, like, storytelling, even just decent filmmaking. And I appreciate that he doesn't treat the audience like idiots. You know, a lot of major movies nowadays, you know, they really don't allow the audience to make any inference at all. And the reason is in part because of their need to sell to international audiences. So things that would be implied to a US audience just aren't need to be stated explicitly for international audiences, so that the ideas translate across cultures and across languages, right? Something that might be implied clearly in English may not come across in Chinese, or it may need to be expressed differently in Russian. So if you know, because these major studios, so much of their revenue comes from overseas, movies have actually gotten significantly stupider. I think that's why people respond really well to sort of thoughtful, innovative shows, and even stuff like this. This is interesting. It's the only one that's not VHS quality. Once again, who has the camera? Oh man, an actual person. Is this director Beck? So, actually, do you guys know the origin of the white coat? It's so that physicians could know right away if they got blood on them, right? If your white coat had splatter, it was easy to see if someone had gotten fluid on you, and you could take it off and clean it and put on a clean one. It was sort of like a proto version of scrubs. Again, like, it originated in like the dawn of germ theory. So it wasn't like people had a really good sense of how stuff spread, but they knew they didn't want to be covered in blood. And actually, I don't think it's that common now. If you look at labs, most researchers, and in hospitals, only physicians will wear the white coat just symbolically so they don't get misidentified, especially nowadays, because I think it's like 60% of medical graduates are women. So if you're interacting with someone who is like 70 years old, they may still think Dr. Man, nurse woman, when the reality is that, you know, nursing is a lucrative enough profession that draws anybody who enjoys money, which is all of us. And physician, you know, being a physician obviously has opened up to women, and they are at all levels of the profession now. So it can be helpful for them to be like, you can identify me by the big white coat when I walk in the room. But some doctors do find it pretentious. So it really bothers me that the white coats are so rumpled and wrinkled. Looks like they just got stuffed into a sack and thrown out. Really, they're gonna be hung up. Yeah, normally I'm gonna tell you guys they would just wear regular clothes. Even in the 90s. In the 90s were pretty rigid for corporate dress.
We're in turn seconds coming out of perfect.
The area. Already? What do you mean by that? Exactly. Sorry, can you repeat that?
The fear and disgust. Okay, that's pretty funny. You know what's interesting is they actually did a study at one point in which they deliberately created a it wasn't supposed to be shockingly disgusting, but it was supposed to be like shockingly beautiful. It was some sort of art display where the intention was to make you think you were in a regular gallery. You step through a nondescript door, and suddenly it was like a beautiful, like a planetarium or something, like really open, really beautiful. And what the researchers did is they recorded very closely people's faces as they walked in, right? And then after the experience, they said, "Hey, tell me about your emotions when you walked into the big open expanse." And people would say, "Oh man, my jaw dropped. I was in awe. I was shocked. It was incredible." And something like a third of people actually did, like their jaw actually dropped. They looked like, the YouTube face, like, but 2/3 of people, their facial expression didn't change despite a ton of feelings, right? It just, they didn't come out through the face, right? And it's interesting, there's a theory that human beings and their commitment to facial expressions is an evolutionary tool for communicating with others non-verbally. So it's the sort of the way that you can say the same words. For example, I can be like, "You asshole," right? And it's different if I go, "You asshole," versus "You asshole," like, and then, and you know the difference between you're greeting a friend and you're doing a little ribbing and you are really mad at someone, but it has to be shown through the face. And the question is, right, can you fake it? Can you fake like you're glad to see somebody? "Hey, buddy," right? Like, "Hey, what's going on, asshole?" And in your heart, you're like, "That wasn't a joke. You're really an asshole." So it's fascinating that you think you can read people's faces sometimes and what they're really feeling underneath, but it's more often than not untrue, I guess.
That is not a fucking person!
Okay, one of the things I appreciate is that this is actually how grainy CRT TVs were, cathode ray tubes. This is actually what that would look like. And the details were really this tough to discern. It's kind of weird. Who are you going to be calling? Why? So here's the thing. This looks like some sort of intercom that allows you to communicate to an area that you can't physically visit. Say a quarantine area or a medical ward or a detention center. That's usually what this sort of thing is for. It could also sometimes be to reach other phones to have a secure like a proto intranet, right? Where instead of going for phones, Instead of having internet or a secure email system or computer terminals, you have a phone. That seems like an old school way of doing it. But this Mike says that it's also can be broadcast as a speaker system, which is interesting in its own right. Who are they going to be speaking to? So here's something else that I think is really interesting, is there's this thing called normalcy bias. And normalcy bias is the idea that human beings struggle to understand when they need to break normal protocol, and to understand that when severe risks and dangers are in play. A good example is if you see sometimes videos of public mass shootings, you may notice that people sometimes some people don't seem to understand how dire the situation is. They hear gunshots, they know it's gunshots, but then they begin to do things like put away their food or gather their bags or try to do ridiculous things that aren't a priority, right? The priority is immediately get away from the situation, run. And a subset of people have this normalcy bias where they just can't get out of the idea that they have to follow normal patterns. Another good example is people who really wanted to not disrupt their lives. For example, in Ukraine, right? Look at how many villages are taken over and 90% of the residents have fled, but 10% insist on staying in place. And they believe their normalcy bias is so strong that they think the people telling them that there's a war on, that their village is going to be destroyed, that their lives are in grave, imminent danger. And even if they think all those things are true, they just go, well, I'll be fine. And it's just because they've been fine all the other times. They don't understand that at some point, the normal way of approaching a situation, you have to abandon it. Huh, well, that's new. Yep, like we talked about. They're building their command center. No, maybe not. Maybe they're literally trying to seal off that wing of the back rooms. That is not, well, this is the thing, right? When you're doing industrial or commercial research, is that even though you may find something interesting, unless it's going to offer you a monetary return, you can't pursue it, right? You always wonder, when they were building the first iPhone, did they discover things that might have different applications, or just directions to take research and miniaturization that no one had thought of, but because it wasn't going to immediately help them develop a better iPhone, that they just sort of shelved it. And this is why sometimes theoretical research without real practical applications is important, because it sort of pushes that threshold outward, and then it's followed by research into practical applications. But somebody at some point needs to show that there's this brand new idea or concept or possibility, and then sometimes the commercial research will follow. Okay, do they need the hazmat suits or not? kind of interesting. So they are cognizant that there's a threat. Oh, you see that? There's a moment where something was spliced in. Am I crazy? Maybe I am. Maybe I was just seeing things. There it is. Something just shifted a little. But what is it? We move forward, forward, forward. We're doing this frame by frame, by the way. There it is. Okay, it's not really clear. It's just the angle of the camera itself is shifting. And here's the rest of the frame. Okay. Okay, it's not as dramatic as I thought. All right, so what else have we learned about the backrooms from this? Well, the answer is we know that the Async Research Institute knows about the entity, and frankly, that they've taken steps to try to protect themselves from it. But they have not stopped the research. So troubling, worrying, fascinating. We will definitely be checking out the remaining like 2 or 3 videos, and hopefully maybe Kane Pixels will drop another one for us in the next couple weeks. Anyway, guys, if you want some combat video breakdowns too spicy for YouTube, check out the Patreon. Thanks to my Lieutenant tier patrons. See you in the next one.